Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada. In episode 53, Don and Derek talk running. Yeah, I'm open to anything at this point, just something different, like you said.
Do me a favor, talk to me about your courses for a second. Like I want to, obviously I know I know what you do, but kind of go through, because I know this is going to be very well thought out. And I know just from being around you all these years now, it's like, I know it's going to be something to see. So can you kind of go into detail about it a little bit?
I mean, I think what this course has become, and I'll send you some video of some of the stuff that I've done, just like working with people as part of a workshop setting, but was, everybody always agonizes over like the PowerPoint slides. And I've done that now for like the last 5 or 6 years. I have a canned presentation for every topic, and I'm, is this the right slide? Is this the right picture? And after a while, the best part was actually just doing the coaching piece. Like, okay, let's break up. Let's do the coaching. Let's do the demonstration. This is how you do it. And I got way better feedback on when I was coaching people and they were seeing how I was coaching than when I put up like a study or a great PowerPoint slide that I might have spent 3 days trying to put together. So I think everything is gravitated towards, let's do hands-on, let's do real-time coaching so that people can pick that up. And really that's how I learned, right? When I was working with Charlie Francis, like I go there, I see him coach, and you're like, oh, okay. And maybe I didn't get it at that time, but when I went out and coached, then I could kind of recall, okay, that makes sense. I'm in that scenario now. So I think that's what everything has evolved into, is this hands-on experience where you throw different people at me. Some may be an elite athlete, some may be a master's marathoner, some may be, a fitness coach, personal trainer who just works with average people, and we just work with them and see what their problems are and see how we solve it and how we work with that person and engage with that person. So I think that's the value of it, and that's where it's evolved. So I still have some slides as part of the course because you got to have some structured content, but the value is the experience of going through the coaching process. So that's what it's come down to. And I did something with the Seahawks couple of months ago, and that's where the best stuff happened, is when I had them doing the actual drills and work, and they had a better time rather than sitting in the training room looking at slides.
Yeah, it gets a little I just think the changing someone's physiology is important. I just think just getting them pumped up and getting them engaging, and it is interesting to see people's coaching. So I mean, Brett Bartholomew is talking about it a lot right now. He's really kind of going into that whole, I'm starting to see his niche is really becoming. He's a tremendous coach, tremendous. I mean, incredibly smart guy, but he really is about, tying in this with this.
Yeah, engaging people. Yeah.
There's just some things you can't teach. And I think the misconception is I might be able to see you and your coaching style and how you deliver content to someone. And I could try that. And it's just ungenuine. It doesn't work for me, and vice versa. Like, I'm not one of these guys that can pump someone up. Like, come on. I'm more like, I'll get in your face and I'll start talking to you. And I'm just like, and I want you to have to fucking do this. And it's out of nowhere. They're like, holy shit. It's just the way that I'm built and the way that I am. And I think it's interesting for people to see those different styles and just say, listen, these are all effective. Brad's phenomenal. Derek's phenomenal. Charlie sometimes will just be sitting there like, good, boom. It'll just kind of jump at you. You're like, holy shit. But that's Charlie. Like, he'll kind of pump you up that way. So I think it's fun to see. I think it's interesting, but I like being very clear, like, find your own style.
Yeah.
Like, find what works for you. But you're not just going to be talking about coaching style. I mean, you're going to be going into sprint mechanics, power. What are you going to be kind of diving into a little bit?
Yeah, so the basic foundation of the course is these are the drills and the exercises that I use to build the foundation of movement.
Right.
And then everything springs off of there. So if you're going to work with a football player, if you're going to work with like I said, a long distance runner, if you're going to work in a rehab scenario. So there's a branch of it that's going to be purely rehab and medical.
Right.
So if I work with, if I teach physiotherapists, um, this is how, this is my model for teaching locomotion and running, and this is how it relates to the rehabilitation process, right? So everything is built off this basic foundation of this is how you move in the drill, this is how you coordinate arms and legs, this is your posture, and then just everything branches off of there. So I'm trying to make it easy for people. And like you said, like you want to have a template, but I was going to use this visual where I show like the trampoline. You know how trampolines now have the bloody fencing around it, and
Yeah.
people can't get hurt.
Yeah.
So to some degree, we're going to have a trampoline with some safety netting around it, but you can still tumble and do things within that trampoline, and you can still get hurt. But the idea is I've provided a structure that gives you some ability and latitude to do your own thing as well. But as long as you stay within the confines of the trampoline and don't jump out of the top of it, I think you're going to be okay. But I like you said, put your own license on it. Like, here's what I do, put your own license on it and run with it.
Is this more for like GPP, or is this more to optimize runners? Is this template that you're putting together?
I mean, it could be for anything. Like, and I'm not limiting to, like, I'll have 3 streams. I'm going to have the sports stream. So it's just if you work with athletes, these are the things, and then it'll go by sport, and then you'll have the fitness stream, which it might just be energy systems, body composition related. It might be if you're working with, people who want to go run a 5K for the first time or a 10K. And then there's the med version, which is how do you resolve soft tissue injuries? How, if you have an ACL or a knee injury or a foot or lower leg injury, this is how I progress people through. And I was just working with a football player the other day, and he had a calf injury. So I said, okay, this is how I do it for a calf injury. So, those are the 3 streams. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I said, or he's the guy who's doing my website, and he's trying to look at the marketing approach. And he says, is the course you're going to give for the pro sports team, is that going to be the same as the people who are the private gym owners? And I said, essentially the content is the same, but my delivery is going to be different because they have different constraints. So
Right.
if you're working for an NFL team, you have 5 weeks to do off-season training, and then that's pretty much it. So you better do things right in that 5 weeks. If you're a private gym owner and you have 14-year-olds coming in and they're soccer players, then and you have 6 months, this is different. If I work with you and you're working with a celebrity who has to run in a movie and we want to do something there, that's a different way of approaching it, right? So
so you are basically teaching all the above, the ability to become faster,
more efficient, more injury resilient, just enjoy it while you're doing it. So, and I think
not feel like shit either. Not feel like
yeah. Like
right?
there's a great article somebody posted on Twitter, and they said like the relationship between stride frequency and stride length and injury. So if you're taking too big a step and you're landing hard, you're going to get injured more. If you're taking too many steps in too short a time, you're probably going to burn your fuel a little too quickly and, get fatigued. So, I mean, stuff like that, like the nuances of making people better performers, I hate to say the word faster all the time, but I guess it is. So, it depends on what you want out of it. So I just trying to look at all the different variables involved and all the potential goals that people have, and then just putting everything together.
Getting into GPP a little bit, general physical preparedness, which is typically what I think 99% of people who work out in New York are doing, correct? I mean, they go
General
to the
fitness, yeah.
Yeah. So what do they want? What is their goals? They want to look better. They want to feel better. They want to move better. They want to become more resilient. I almost feel like for an individual coming in with no major issues, this is almost like the foundation to everything. This is like, to me, it's probably the most important piece of the puzzle. You can get on a squat, you get in a squat rack, deadlift bar, be strong, do all that stuff. But this is probably one of the most overlooked areas of GPP.
I think people take it for granted. Like everybody should know how to walk, run, jog.
But they don't.
But they don't. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I was ever taught until I was an adult and I actually saw the right person who knew what he was talking about. But in physical education, nobody taught me how to run. They just made you run around the school, right?
Yeah,
So
but what is the aging population complaining of? They're complaining that, oh, they had the back sore, my hamstrings feel tight all the time, I'm losing a step. It's probably the most common thing I hear from people coming in. You know what? I've really lost a step this last year. And I don't even have to ask, like, please elaborate. I know what you mean. Like a step meaning like that first, I'm going to jog across the street, a cab's coming. This is New York City that we're talking about. And it's like, oh wow, I feel slower. I've gone through it. Like we were talking last week
yep.
about the elasticity of a muscle, and how this winter I played a lot of hockey, but I really neglected. I didn't do any running this winter. It's probably one of the first winters I've ever not done any running. And I felt like I got slower. So the last couple of weeks, I'm back on the track. I'm working on your 10 to 15 minutes bursts. They're not at 100% right now because I feel like I really have to warm into it. And then the following weekend came and I'm like, all right, once I warmed up, I feel like I can move a little bit faster. Then, Wednesday I'm on the field with my son throwing a baseball around, and I'm moving a little bit better laterally. And I'm like, oh shit, like it's coming back to me. It's coming back pretty quickly. But people, they stop focusing on this. And when you stop focusing on that, it does lead, your body moves slower. And you know what I like to refer to it as, Derek, and you can agree or disagree with me. I grew up with a 19-foot Boston Whaler, and I had an outboard engine. And you'd lift the engine out of water. And I remember I'd ski so much. I probably skied I'm skiing 6 days a week. So you're always running the boat. And you would never grow any moss or barnacles on the hull of the boat. But I remember a couple times, there was a vacation, there was a travel for something, and the boat's sitting in the water for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You come back 1 week, there's a light film on the end of the boat. No big deal. You go run it for 1,000 feet and the film comes off. But if that boat starts sitting 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 10, 12, 4, out of nowhere, that becomes like, you go run it, like once barnacles come on that boat, you got to pull that boat, you got to start scraping that hull. So I look at the human body as the same thing. Like, you can lay off this stuff for a little bit, but you start laying off this stuff for months, years at a clip, like, man, it's gonna take you that much time. We understand this with the gym, yet you don't hear enough people. People be like, oh, I have to get back to the gym and I got to start lifting again. But I never hear them being like, oh, I got to go to the track and start working on, 10-meter bursts. It's like, I got to start working on my gait. Like, you don't hear them talk about this stuff. And in my opinion, that's like, wow, that should start first. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I'm going to use that tagline. Don't let the barnacles grow on my boat.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I want
it is definitely a use it or lose it proposition with all this stuff. And even if you decide, oh, I'm going to do weightlifting, like I've been asked to do presentations on how do I do weightlifting for speed, like to run faster. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And I have a great video that shows this guy who's like a power lifter, bodybuilder, and he blows both his hamstrings because he's racing against a guy who's a sprinter. So, you have to do, I mean, it's not just you have to exercise specifically in, whatever you want to do. And in the case of running or sprinting, if you don't run or sprint, it's going to end pretty badly. And you don't, and then like you said, maybe sometimes you just have to run the boat for 10 minutes. Like you don't have to go out and do an hour and a half workout of running. Go do a couple of runs, and then that'll keep you okay for the next time or the next time, right? The maintenance part is easy.
But that's exactly it. You just said it. If I run the boat for 5 minutes a week, only 5 minutes for 4 months, there's probably going to be no crap at the bottom of that boat.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel like the human body's the same way. But I like this course, though I know it's for coaches, I would almost invite a lot of the general, because you have a very easy way of breaking things down. And at least if someone comes and they can't digest even the technical, they're going to leave there going, oh God, I got to run the boat a little bit. And oh God, you know what, this is a really clean, simplistic way that Derek laid it out for me. So yeah, I welcome coaches to come down, but I really do think, general pop, if you got a weekend, you should really think about this. I mean, not only you're going to feel better, but even from the aesthetic standpoint, man, I mean, a sprinter's body, I mean, learning to sprint, I mean, focusing on that, I mean, some of the best physiques I've ever seen on the planet.
Yeah, and we'll cover all that, and I mean, we'll do deep dives into the science behind, the muscles and tendons and the whole thing. I mean, we talk about plyometrics too, and how important it is to treat the body like a spring. And I have these great videos of animal models. So I have like a cheetah, a racing dog, a horse. I even have an ostrich, which is interesting. And you can see how they run, and everything is based on this vertical spring model where you can see not the muscles but more the tendons and the ligaments are creating that spring effect. And there was a fellow in New York, a trainer, Gabriel Reyes. He was asking me about working with long distance runners for the marathon, and he says they don't get it. I'm trying to work on all these things you taught me, like the sprinting and the drills and the plyometrics, and they don't get it. They just want to run more. And I said, well, let's make this a business case. So if I can take off two one hundredths of a second, which is like nothing, you can't even perceive that. If I can take off 2/100ths of a second off of each ground contact, each step, how does that up over a marathon? And most people don't know how many steps are in a marathon, but it's about 60,000 steps. So you're taking 60,000 steps. If I can take 2/100ths off of each step by making you more elastic, that's 20 minutes you're going to save on your run.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's part of the sales and marketing. You have to throw in the math and show people like this is what the difference will be.
Yeah, but it's
Because,
suddenly there's an emotional grabber now for someone who's training for a marathon.
yeah, why would I just pound out all those miles when I can take 20 minutes off by just training smart?
It's so interesting to me how someone could be so intrigued by one style of training or something like marathon, like like a lot of the marathon runners I've been around, they have no interest in sprint, like, and vice versa. Sprinters have no,
Yep.
but you know, they're both running. You know what I'm saying? But it's running at this different intensity. It's just, and even with a lot of the marathon runners I talk to, they just get into this zone where they can just kind of get lost and just go, and it's therapeutic, and they just get into this zone, and it is so different but so similar at the same time. But I find it fascinating, how one might not interest the other.
Certainly.
But maybe it's the same as, maybe it's like comparing powerlifting with bodybuilding. Maybe it's like someone who is just so into hypertrophy training and doing time under tension, or a West Side guy doing the conjugate method who, the dynamic effort, it might take them 2 seconds to perform 3 reps. And you don't think that improves speed?
Um, like if I had to choose, like if you said I could only do one thing, I wouldn't do weightlifting. I would obviously run, but
Right.
certainly there is the ability to improve somebody's general strength qualities, lower body strength that will contribute. Now, the question is, like, if you only have a limited amount of time, I'd probably make somebody do, like I said, jumps, plyos, or maybe like hill running or some sort of resistance that's a little more, or even some of the sled work that you guys do. Um, I'm not saying like with all my sprinters, we did Olympic lifts, we did, squatting, deadlifting, pressing, and all that. But I found that you had to be really careful because we had really good athletes and they would get better at the weightlifting. So we had a kid who could like power clean like 350 pounds, but he could also run 10.3 seconds in the 100. And the more that we kind of pushed him into the weightlifting because he was good at it, you get kind of this instant gratification thing out of it. The more it sucked energy away from his running.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. So,
What was I going to bring up as I'm reaching for my chapstick right now? Oh my God. Oh, here it is. Sorry.
but certainly there's certain mindsets that you have to tap into when you're working with somebody. And if you're like a fast twitch person, then you push them more to the speed stuff. If they're not as fast twitch, maybe you do a little more work capacity stuff. And I was always taught you push people towards what they're good at. And a lot of people will say, well, you got to find out what you're bad at and fix that. And sometimes that doesn't work. It just irritates people.
Do you have, and I know the answer very well can be, it depends on the individual, but do you have a favorite drill? Like I've spoken to a couple of coaches, and they'll claim that hill sprints are their favorite, drill. Like, oh, it's my favorite. Hill sprints are the best. Like, you know what I'm saying? Do you have a favorite drill that you like if you have to choose one type of thing? What would you be leaning on?
Yeah, I mean, I like the hill. Like, and people will always ask me. So I worked with Mark Uyama, who's a head strength coach at the Minnesota Vikings, and they were building a new facility. And a lot of teams will do like sled pulls, right, on the turf, and but that's a nightmare if you have whatever 60 guys or 70 guys, or if you're a college team and you have 120
Wait,
guys.
yeah, it's like it's
How do you
crazy.
do the sleds, right? So you get the intern out there setting up the sleds, and then does a 300-pound guy have the same sled as the 185-pound guy? And so with the Vikings, we had them build hills at different
Pitches,
angles,
angles.
grades, yeah. And so now, and it's turf, right? And so now they use those for a lot of their resisted sprint work.
What were the grades? How did you break that down?
Um, Basically, it's gonna like, and I think it worked out to being very similar to what a wheelchair ramp would be, because you don't want it too steep.
Right.
There's reasons for that. One, it slows you down. It's if it's too slow, too steep. The other is it puts a lot of stress on the Achilles and the calf. And again, if you're working with 350-pound linemen, you don't want that. So it was basically about a 7 to 9%, which is about a 5-degree slope, which doesn't seem like much, but it's enough. Like
Was
it's
that
just
equivalent to like a 5 degree? And I'm not saying power treadmill, but if you were going to put it up 5 degrees on a treadmill, is it about?
probably,
Yeah.
probably. And again, with the treadmill, you're still very careful with the volumes, because it does put a lot more posterior stress onto the ankle, foot, and calf and Achilles. So
What are some of your favorite benefits? So say someone goes out and they find a 5 degree pitch, and they're going to go do sprints. What do you recommend them sprinting at? And can you go through some of the benefits on that?
yeah, well, no, I usually have because we're using it to develop acceleration, and most people don't accelerate beyond 30 yards, right? So if you're Usain Bolt, you might be accelerating all the way up to 70 meters, 70 yards, 70 meters, but we're not, you and I aren't Usain Bolt. So 20, 30 yards to work on that ability to accelerate. And the hill allows you to hold the right position for acceleration. So it kind of slows things down enough so that people can work on technique. It adds the right amount of resistance. So when we were taught about resistance and sled pulling, usually you never wanted to go any heavier or steeper than would be 10% greater than your normal time. So if I ran a 10 flat 100, I wouldn't want to run that 100 in longer than 11 seconds if I was going up an incline. So this 5 to 10% rule, I'm always, watching whether I'm timing somebody. But the
That's how
idea,
you'll kind of, sorry to interrupt, but that's how you'll, so if you see someone on an elevation run slower than 10% of an increase, that'll be a cue for you to dial it down a little bit, that they're just.
yeah, yeah. And so you have to make this distinction between, like, are we coaching speed or are we coaching strength? So when you have your clients doing the sled pushes, that's a strength modality, right? Whereas if you wanted to build speed, now you have to adhere to that sort of 10% resistance rule. So, or that
Yeah,
10%.
wouldn't you be able, I mean, but you could technically train speed on it. You just have to go exceptionally light.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
So,
it's funny.
so
It reminds me, I was talking with Greg Rose 14 years ago, and right around the time where I opened Drive. And we were talking about weighted clubs, weighted bats. And I think he was the one who kind of broke into me. It might have been 15 years ago. And he was like, no, it's going to slow you down. And I remember back then being like, really? It's going to slow you down? Like, but I feel like I could swing faster and this and that. He goes, no, the research shows, or we have research to show that 10% heavier and 10% lighter are your overspeed and underspeed weights. And when getting into golf, when you're talking about a 60-gram shaft, a 70-gram shaft without the club head on it, man, I'm sorry, that's without the club head on it. Then
yeah,
yeah, and yeah, it's going to get a little bit heavier, but 10% is very little.
yeah,
And even they have these super speed sticks now, which actually is my favorite. It's my favorite device in golf, hands down, for creating swing speed. Like 100%, 100%. I've seen guys improve TrackMan numbers significant. I've seen guys go from 108 on swing speed to 120. That is who are like around 1-2 handicap golfers. I've seen that. I have the numbers. 108 to 120 swing speed in less than a year, which is significant. It might have been 6 months. So I mean, I've seen some incredible, but again, 10%. We're not talking about a big number here.
Yeah, somebody sent me a golf club from Korea, I think it was, and it's just a shaft that's a little heavier on one end, and you can flip it around. And you go over speed or under speed, and it was pretty cool. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
is it a
okay.
super speed? Is it a super speed club?
Let
Is
me
it like
see it.
the red or blue or
Yeah,
yellow?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no, no. He only sent one.
I think I have a couple of them, but
He's
yeah,
gonna
but
send maybe three of them, I would think.
okay, they're different weights.
Yeah, so that's your overspeed, meaning your lighter club, your underspeed, which is your heavier club, and then you have like your typical, like regular speed, like your typical weight, and they basically just they have a whole group of drills and
Okay, and it does work based on
no,
your
no, no,
experience.
it hands down 100% works. Like
Oh, okay.
1000%. If you're not on tour and you're not using it, I really feel like that you're leaking and you're leaving a lot of gas in the bag. But this is teaching people to move their body with some speed. It's like
Yeah.
you want to run. You want to run faster. The first thing I'd recommend you do. What's the first thing you recommend you doing? Like run fast. like are you going to run a marathon or run faster? Or are you going to turn around and do 15-meter sprints? I don't know. You tell me. You're the run expert. I know what I think you're going to say. But
Yeah, well, it was interesting you got onto the whole the baseball thing, and I know with pitching they were doing overweighted and underweighted balls too, and I think what they found was just the variability itself was useful. So it wasn't like always use overweight or always use underweight, but just vary it up, and I think that just creates a stimulus effect. So I would say my takeaway from that was I don't do overspeed, but I do. We'll do an incline sprint or a weighted sprint, and then we'll do it on the flat. So I want them to always understand the difference between what they felt on the weighted one versus the unweighted one, right? And they could apply it back to their actual sprinting. So
you wouldn't have anyone run on like a really light downhill pitch for some overspeed. It's just
I think some people have tried that, on a crown field, like a crown turf field, and they would run down the crown. But I mean, the only thing with that is obviously you need to have that facility. It has to be even. Like I've seen some people try to run down grass hills and they misstep and fall down. So there is a risk reward thing, but certainly some people have done it successfully.
if you knew for impossible question. It's almost an impossible question, but speaking theoretically, if you knew for a fact you can have one person do that drill and they wouldn't get hurt doing it, would you have them do it?
Yes, I think so. And Charlie Francis would always have people like if they decided on one day there was like a heavy wind, they would run with the wind. And he had this,
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah, right. So because when you run, you're displacing air, right? So if the wind is going with you, it's not really pushing you; it's just getting out of the way quicker. So it is like an unloaded sprint, I guess. So there's a kid that ran 9:98, a white kid in Texas a high school kid who ran under 10 seconds, but it was like a 4.7 meter per second wind, which is illegal. But Charlie always said if somebody could run that fast with a wind, ultimately it tells us that they have the nervous system to run that speed later on. So, I mean, that was the benefit of giving somebody that ability to run faster under those conditions. So if you had to use a slight downhill, maybe, that would work too. It's just finding that right facility for that.
How much does that how much does that play into effect? Take the Olympics. I mean, everything is down to what is it, 1/100th of a
Yeah,
second,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, how much does that play into effect? I mean, if you have Usain Bolt running and he's downwind and he sets a world record, how much is that? How much could that typically move the needle? I mean, it's not. I mean, when you're comparing records, is that really an even playing field from year to year now? I mean,
It's so tough. Like they have wind gauges along the side of the track, but they're not the entire length of the track. So you could have a good push at the beginning or a good push at the end that may not be picked up by the wind gauge. So it's kind of an approximation. And the legal limit is 2 meters per second tailwind, anything over that. So you could be right on 2 meters per second, and that's a legal run. Or, maybe you broke the record with a zero wind, but it's not the same, right? So if you had 2 meter per second wind, we could feel that. We'd go outside, we'd be like, okay, I can feel that. That's a pretty good wind. So it's not a level playing field. And then there's the altitude effect. So if it's slightly higher altitude, the wind's a little thinner, or the air's a little thinner, so you can run through it a lot easier. So at Mexico City back in '68, when Bob Beamon broke the long jump record, it's at 7,000 feet altitude. that makes a difference as well. So there's all these factors in the track surface. If it's stiffer and springier, it's faster. If it's softer, not as good, right? That's why Jesse Owens ran on like a cinder track, like basically a dirt track, and he ran 10.3. And everybody's like, well, if he ran on a real track like today, he could probably run like Usain Bolt. Who knows? So there's all these variables.
It's what bothered me about swimming. One of my favorite events was, there became a time where they started wearing these full suits.
Yep.
And then, I don't know, did those become illegal at a certain point? But, they're changing the drag. Even Major League Baseball, in my opinion, it's not a level playing field. If you go to Yankee Stadium and they got a short right field porch and the wind is supposedly driving everything out to right field, I think every field, every stadium,
like Colorado too, right? Like it's at altitude.
Yeah, but and maybe that's just something that you can't fix. But I feel like every field's dimensions should be the same. Like whatever it is, I'm not saying this is the number it should be, but maybe left field line, right field line, 310.
Yep.
Left center, 375. Dead center, 405. Like have those, like from home to first is 90 feet. From home to second in a straight line is 120. From pitchers to home is 60 feet 6 inches. So like you have the diamond is the specific dimension. Yet the outfield is a little different. Walls are higher. The Green Monster, but it's not really a level playing field to me. And it's like I almost feel like that's unfair. Like what if you're a monster right-handed hitter playing in Yankee Stadium and you're a pole ball hitter, and the next thing you know, you're hitting 40 home runs a year for the next 10 years. I mean, is that going to happen if you're in, wherever, Texas? I don't know. And that's my whole point. I don't get that. I don't mind the stadium. Obviously, the stadium should have their own twist and, let them look differently. And there's certain stadiums I like better than others. But that field should be exactly the same. That pool should be exactly the same. The athlete should be, be able to wear, like, if you're wearing briefs, everyone's got to wear briefs. Be in a full suit that's allowing you to be more buoyant. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Ice hockey rinks are the same, like NHL rinks are the same lengths. The nets are the same lengths. Like
basketball,
yeah, it'd be basketball. It'd be like changing that. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing right now is that shoe companies are now creating these carbon fiber platforms that actually act like a spring. So people are crying foul about like New Balance or Nike making this.
It's all bullshit. Let them all run barefooted. Seriously, man. Like, in all honesty, like if you train, let me ask you a question. Do you think if a child is born and runs his whole life and just runs barefooted, learns how to run properly and runs barefooted, what do you think is going to happen to that individual? Are they going to screw themselves up? Could they potentially build a stronger structure? I'm asking you. I don't know the answer to this. What do you think? Are they going to be able to run? Are they going to be able to run? I ran when I was in the Bahamas years ago. I remember racing against a Bahamian, and we ran on this dirt road, and there were thorns everywhere, and I'm running across it, and I'm dying. And he kicked my ass because he ran across it. I'm like, how the hell did you do that? He goes, I've been doing it my whole life. I don't even feel it anymore. Good or bad?
He had huge calluses. I mean, first, I'll preface it by saying, like, choose your parents well. But,
I love it.
But, yeah, I mean, certainly, if it's something you've always done and I mean, the barefoot people will say that it makes you run more naturally and on the ball of your foot and not landing in heel striking. And so certainly, I think it's better than wearing some of the shoes that the kids wear now. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's sort of this panacea of like, yeah, everybody should run, everybody should be fit, and this is the way we should do it. But we're such a free market environment now, like everybody can do what they want to do and everybody's equal and so I don't know. I think we should be like, I went to my kids' track meet, and I'm watching 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-olds, and I'll post some of that video, and it's just interesting to see what the winner is doing versus the person in last place, and there's significantly different technique, and you can tell there's different muscle quality and fiber types going on there. And I'm sure if you race their parents, they'd finish the same, order. But these are kids who haven't been coached, and you watch them run, and that's natural selection at its finest, where you just go, okay, that's a fast kid, and
Did
that's
you
the kid.
coach your son?
A little bit. Like, I'm very careful about that. Like,
He
you
is an
know,
absolute savage.
yeah, we're
That kid
just
can move, man.
yeah, and that's the thing. Um, I think you kind of give them little bits of information on a need to know basis, and then they just you let them compete, you let them play. But certainly, I'm not over structuring anything with him. I'm just kind of going, okay, try this. Goes out, and it's been successful. So
Well,
I don't know.
I've seen him move on a field, and his change of direction seems exceptional. His explosive speed, his athleticism seems outstanding. But yet, I'm not sitting there with a stopwatch, or I'm not looking at numbers. Is that just visually what he looks like, or are his numbers a lot? Or how does he compare with the kids on his team?
Um, I mean, he's obviously one of the fastest. There's one other kid that's faster but doesn't move as well.
Yeah,
So, in a straight line, So, and then we've been doing some stuff here and lifting weights, and we just been taking it really slow and working on some of the basics that you would work on.
yeah.
This is how you squat. This is how you pull something. Have him doing some bench press, and he's getting stronger, but that's not necessarily the reason why he's performing that way on the field. It's just, I mean, I know we have to do that stuff, but a lot of it's just putting him in good situations so that he's not overtraining and he's having fun and he likes to compete. So I don't know. That's kind of the secret sauce, is not overdoing it.
It's all psychology with children. I know
Yeah,
people have been on Boyle's case lately, and they've been messaging him like, at what age should they start training at? And he's kind of, I feel like he's been living around the 11, 12-year-old range, but he's like, and then he gets in, very specific types of training for a young kid, and you hear him discuss. And I'm just repeating what you and I know already, but it's interesting to others listening to this how, I've seen it. I've seen parents come in here with kids that are golfers, and they haven't played golf all year long, and they're 10. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, come on. This doesn't mean he's going to be, or she's going to be Tiger Woods. Like, get him kicking a soccer ball, throwing a football, a Frisbee, like, allow them to use their body's mechanics. Don't do things so structured. Leave them alone. Let them play. Let them have fun. It was they were interviewing Wayne Gretzky. I don't know how old it was, but they said, I think it was like on some documentary, a father took his child up to Gretzky and was like, ask him right now, how much Wayne, tell him, how much did you practice? And Wayne's like, God, I never practiced. I played. Like, if I'm on the ice 10, 12 hours a day, it wasn't practice. I was out there playing and having fun. And I've never seen a parent, I've never really seen it, a parent who pushed their child so much to where they made it. I mean, you could argue and say Tiger Woods or Woods. I still think Tiger enjoyed it early on.
sure.
Other things came about that, and there were other issues that he ended up having early on that he hopefully fought and beat. But it really is. I don't coach my kid. I was asked to coach his baseball team this year. I said no.
Yeah.
Not because I don't love him. I love my son more than anything. I love my daughter more than anything. I just want to look at him after the game, and I just want to say, hey, listen, I'm proud of you no matter how you did. Like, my son Donnie had a good game the other day, and I said, you know what, I'm really proud of you. And he goes, well, he goes, yeah, those hits were good. I go, no, not about the hits. I go, something happened on the field that wasn't good, and you handled yourself a really good way. I was really proud of how you handled yourself.
Yeah.
To understand whether you strike out 3 times or get 3 hits, it's more important for me to see how you handle yourself on the field, and you handled yourself really well. I'm proud of you. And he kind of like pumped his chest up. And I think it's those lessons, parents, we all want our kids to do so well. And I think at times you just leave alone, let them play, let the kids play, like in Bad News Bears.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think if he hits a home run or he gets somebody out, those are obvious things that he knows, like, I did that. So if you're pointing out these things that maybe he doesn't recognize intuitively, that's more positive and rounds him out better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Derek, do me a favor. I know we talked a lot about your courses we got into some fun topics about kids, but I know a lot of people are going to probably want to hear about when are you hosting your next, do you have any courses on the calendar? Where are they at? How can they sign up?
Well, right now we're really focusing on the course at your facility at Drive 495, and I think there's obvious reasons for that, like our relationship and just the staff you have there, and just the environment and culture you've created there. So that's kind of the first big offering of the course, and it's going to be in, like, I think the third week of July and weekend, and like we talked about, make it an event, an experience for people, so that not only are you taking away some good information, but you had a really good experience while you were learning too. So that's what we're focusing on, is teaching the trainers how to work, the running piece, and integrate it with their other training, and just have a good time doing it. So that's going to be the first real one. There's some other little smaller things I'm doing, but it's really just preparation for that.
All right. Well, and I know you're probably going to be up at Mike Ranfone's, one of our really good friends and podcast guests. For everyone out there listening right now, I mean, I put Derek up there as one of the best instructors, teachers, coaches that I've ever met in my life. And I can listen to him weekly all year long and not get bored and still gain some material out of there. So I would highly recommend it. And on top of it all, I'd love to meet anyone coming in to Drive 495. So Derek, I think that was great today, man. I think I think it was a lot of fun. I think there's some other, we've been getting a lot of stuff on the psychology of kids, and it actually kind of made me think about bringing Brett Bartholomew back on at a certain point, because he's been, I know he's definitely evolved a lot, and it'd be a fun topic to be covering with him.
Yeah, I think it's not an area that's addressed enough. Like, everybody gets into the minutia of coaching and technical stuff and sports science, but when it comes down to it, you have to, be a good person and understand how to connect with people, as you found out. So that's probably the reason for both of our success, is that we can relate to people,
Right,
and communicate effectively. And, I don't know, is there a course in that?
I don't know. But I know we could bring some people on, and we could talk. Of course, on that there should be. But let's. Greg Rose too. I'm going to see Greg in a few weeks. I'm going to ask Greg if he's going to come on, but I definitely want to have him on.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, and for people, if they're looking it up, it'll probably be under runningmechanics.com or runningmechanicspro.com. So that's where all the course information will be, and I'll post it up as part of the.
If someone's struggling to get that information, just DM me, Don Saladino, on my Instagram account, and I'll get you all the information over. And all right, brother, I got to.